Hi, and welcome to another Monday Mailbag. This is Scott Ford from MrFordsClass.net, and in this Monday Mailbag, I want to talk about how you can save money. Specifically, I want to talk about buying books for your class. Now, most students will buy their books before class begins. They will get their schedule and they'll go down to the bookstore. At least in my day, back in the, when universities were still a new invention, we used to buy our books from the bookstore before class met. And what we would do is we would go down to the university bookstore with our registration forms, and we would go aisle by aisle. We'd go to the biology section or the psychology section or the English section, and we would find our books that were required. And of course, you had the books that were recommended, and you would wind up walking out of the bookstore dropping several $100s on textbooks. Quite a painful experience. Now, obviously, today's changed a little bit. We have better technology, and so more students are not exactly doing the whole bookstore deal. Maybe they might be going online and finding their books. But a couple of things I want to point out as far as buying your textbooks. First of all, Mr. Ford has been a student for many years. As we've said in previous videos, that's my addiction. Learning is my addiction. I love to be in school. I love to learn. And I never buy my books before I go to my first class meeting. Now, sometimes you might be tempted to buy the books, but personally, again, this is my advice. This is what I do. And so take it or leave it. But I would suggest that you don't buy any textbooks until you go to the first day of class. There is nothing more frustrating being a student than having to drop several $100s on a book or textbooks and then find out your professors don't even use the book. One of the most amazing professors I had in undergrad back at University of South Florida was Dr. Strong, and this guy was just brilliant. He knew something about everything. In fact, he's one of my idols and somebody I like to model myself after as far as just learning something about everything. This guy was amazing. And we go to class, and it was a motivation class for my psychology degree. And going in there, and we didn't need the book. In fact, day one, he's like, okay, you don't need the book. In fact, you need to buy a tape recorder because I'm going to lecture, and that's where the tests are coming from. And of course, apparently the bookstore found out about that before we could return the book to them. So again, my suggestion is wait till the first day of class before you buy your books and find out if you need the textbook. I know personally in my own anatomy class that I teach, I could care less what book you buy. Anatomy and physiology really hasn't changed much in the last few hundred years as far as what we need in our anatomy class. If you're taking a college level, undergrad level anatomy physiology class, you really honestly don't need the most current textbook. The humerus is still the humerus, the femur is still the femur. And having worked with a book publisher company before in a previous job where we did training, this is the training I used to do for the FBI, we used to do training, we used to also have a textbook. And the textbook would change every year or 2 years or so, and the core material is pretty much the same. Addition to addition was usually they might fix a typo or they might add some additional information. For a core class, for a fundamental class of information, you really don't need the most current textbooks for the most part, usually, unless it's a dynamic field. So, for example, I'm also working on another master's degree in Homeland Security. This one does change year from year. So, for example, a book I might have bought a few years ago might not have recent reflections and information that we've gotten from, let's say, Hurricane Sandy or the explosion in Texas in the fertilizer plant. So things change in that industry quite a bit, and so you definitely need the newest textbook. But in a field like anatomy physiology at the undergrad level, where you're just learning the bones and the structures, not a lot has changed in that field. So again, my suggestion on this one is first, go to the first class meeting before you buy the book. 2, if you are supposed to have a book, really kind of try to figure out if you need the most current book that's out there, or if you can get by with a previous editions. And usually, or in some cases, this can save you quite a bit of money if you buy a previous edition. Also, hopefully you all are out there and you're checking the web. I mean, if you're listening to me talk about advice for school, you're obviously going to be a little bit web savvy and a little bit more into technology than somebody who isn't. And so hopefully you're checking out the booksellers online. So hopefully you're checking out, for example, Amazon or Barnes & Noble or other bookstores online or other retailers online that sell books. I know that Amazon and Barnes & Noble, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I believe they'll rent you textbooks. And so you can rent a digital copy of the book. I know personally when I buy books, if I buy a Kindle version, sometimes the Kindle version is a little bit less expensive than the full version, the full hard copy version. It's the same book, it's the same information, except it's a little bit cheaper. It's not as much as an overhead. When you do something like that, though, you have to be careful because, I buy the textbooks and I usually have them on the Kindle, which I have the application for on the iPad, which I can then highlight and do all that stuff on there. I can tell you that for me, even though I really like technology, there's nothing that competes. I'm looking around for a textbook here. I don't seem to have one next to me. There's nothing that really competes with a hardcover book, holding in your hands, taking out the highlighter and highlighting the book. There's something inherently fulfilling about having the text in front of you. So if you are into the Kindle, if you're into digital print, then explore a digital copy of a book. You can maybe rent them. You might get them for less money. I would suggest that if you've never done the digital books before, don't go crazy your first semester in class and buy all digital books. The reason why I'm saying that is because you might get it and you may completely hate it, and then you spent money on the digital copy, and then you probably wind up buying the the physical copy. So if you've never done digital books, I would suggest maybe getting a digital book for fun, seeing how you like it. I know Amazon has a whole section of independent authors who will release free chapters or free books out there. From my understanding, 50 Shades of Grey started like that. I don't know. I couldn't make it through that book. I was like, oh, she whines too much. Anyhow, but try out a digital book and see if it's for you and see if this is something you like. There are some advantages to it and there's some disadvantages to it. One of the primary advantages to it is you can read your book at work. If it's the Kindle version, you can pull it up on a web page and people think you're working because you're looking at the computer screen. So again, rule number one on this one, suggestion number one is go to the first day of class, see if you need the textbook, see if the professor's going to use it. Tip number two on this one is to see if you really need the most current version or if a previous version will work. Tip number three is check online for Kindle versions, digital versions, or the rental versions. You can rent them. And that's pretty much it as far as that goes. And again, this can save you quite a bit of money. In some cases, you can save half. I know, again, from my face-to-face class, students are able to get an older edition of an anatomy book. It works just fine. And sometimes they can save half off the price of the most current book. And it's all pretty much the same material edition with my notes and my lectures. So that's going to conclude our Monday mailbag. It's a very short one, but it can save you quite a bit of money. Don't forget, if you like these videos, to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also find us on Facebook. We have a Mr. Ford's Learning Facebook. You can check that out today. We just broke 2,001 likes, kind of sci-fi there. And of course, we have MrFordsClass.net, where you can see all of our exclusive videos and also help support what we're doing. Until our next Monday mailbag, please feel free to send your questions to us at Mr. Ford at MrFordsClass.com, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.